Welcome to this week's Thursdays with Mike, and happy 2021 to you. Um, as I mentioned in last week's edition, I did want to end 2020 with well, with this paragraph in the Vineyard Statement of Faith, because that's kind of what I'd started, was just working through paragraph by paragraph the Vineyard Statement of Faith, and up to paragraph 3, which is the paragraph about Satan and his minions. And I just didn't want to end 2020 on that note, and I don't want to start 2021 on that note either. So that'll be the plan for next week. We can talk about the devil then. Let's just try to start on a more positive note this year, shall we? And so I've actually been very slowly. In fact, I've decreased my speed intentionally through Eddie Healsom's book, An Interrupted Life. This is her journals and then letters from Westerbork. And Eddie Healsom was a young Jewish woman in Holland during the Second World War, and she ultimately, spoilers, she was she was killed at a German concentration camp as part of the Holocaust, and her journals, which she had no idea how they would be distributed and read at large. And they were distributed, as I recall, because again, this is like a 2-year read. So the introduction, that's a ways back now. But as I recall, they were distributed in Holland even during the final phases of the war to encourage people. I'm thinking, but anyway, she had no idea she was writing for an audience. And I've just intentionally been slowing down just because it's like as long as I'm not done with her journal, it's like she's not dead yet. And I've so enjoyed her company. It's been so meaningful in the flow of my own life as well as the world at large. And so I'm just going to start this year. I think she starts on a very good note, very appropriate note for us. In January of 2021, worldwide, but then I'm just thinking nationally, culturally, politically, religiously, just on every level. This is a good note. So this would be how I would commend us to commence this year and then to follow through. This is reading from her journal, September 23rd, 1942. She's actually at least at... there's confinement which is taking place, there's definitely a transition has taken place. She's no longer free as she was. But anyway, so she's it's escalating. The oppression she lived under was escalating. So no, there's not been an easing. There's been an intensification. And this journal entry, well, I'll just go ahead and get into it. She's addressing this to her friend. I don't know if it's Klaus. I'm just going to say Klaus. So I hope that's okay, Eddie. So she addresses it to her friend Klaus. And she says this: "We shan't get anywhere with hatred, Klaus. Appearances are so often deceptive. Take one of my colleagues. I see him often in my thoughts. The most striking thing about him is his inflexible, rigid neck. He hates our persecutors with an undying hatred, presumably with good reason. But he himself is a bully. He would make a model concentration camp guard. I often watched him standing beside the camp entrance to admit his hunted fellow Jews. Never a pleasant sight. I also remember him throwing a few grubby pieces of licorice to a sobbing 3-year-old across the table and saying gruffly, 'So you don't get it all over your face.' Thinking back, I'm sure it was more awkwardness and shyness than lack of goodwill that made him seem curt. He simply couldn't hit the right tone. When I saw him walking about among the others with his rigid neck and imperious look and his ever-present short pipe, I always thought, all he needs is a whip in his hand. It would suit him to perfection. But still, I never hated him. I found him much too fascinating for that. Now and then I really felt terribly sorry for him. He had such an unhappy, miserable mouth, if the truth be told, the mouth of a 3-year-old who has been unable to get his way with his mother. He himself had meanwhile passed the 30-year mark, a clever fellow, a successful lawyer, one of the most able in Holland, and the father of 2 children. But the mouth of a dissatisfied 3-year-old had been stamped on his face. Okay, and that's kind of a Selah pause. Boy, it might be good to know what kind of mouth has been stamped on our face. And of course, in these days where so many masks are about, who knows what kind of mouth is stamped on our face. Maybe we just need to remember that even when hidden beneath a mask, yeah, what kind of mouth is stamped on our face? The mouth of a dissatisfied 3-year-old stamped on his face. Wow. Okay. There was never any real contact between him and others, and he would give such covert, hungry looks whenever other people were friendly to each other. I could always see him do it, for we lived a life without walls there. Later, I heard a few things about him from a colleague who had known him for years. During the German invasion, he jumped into the street from a 3rd-floor window but failed to kill himself. Later, he threw himself under a car, but again to no avail. He then spent a few months in a mental institution. It was fear, just fear. I also learned that his wife had had to walk on tiptoe in the house because he could not bear the slightest noise, and that he used to storm at his terrified children. I felt such deep, deep pity for him. What sort of life was that? In the end, he hanged himself. I must make sure his name is taken off the card index. Klaus, all I really wanted to say is this. We have so much work to do on ourselves that we shouldn't be thinking of hating our so-called enemies. We are hurtful enough to one another as it is. And I don't really know what I mean when I say that there are bullies and bad characters among our own people, for no one is really bad deep down. I should have liked to reach out to that man with all his fears. I should have liked to trace the source of his panic, to drive him deeper into himself. That is the only thing we can do, Klaus, in times like these. And you, Klaus, give a tired and despondent wave and say, but what you propose to do takes such a long time, and we don't really have all that much time, do we? And I reply, what you want is something people have been trying to get for the last 2,000 years, and for many more thousand years before that. In fact, ever since mankind has existed on Earth. And what do you think the result has been, if I may ask, you say? And I repeat with the same old passion, though I am gradually beginning to think that I am being tiresome. It is the only thing we can do, Klaus. I see no alternative. Each of us must turn inward and destroy in himself all that he thinks he ought to destroy in others. And remember that every atom of hate we add to this world makes it still more inhospitable. Okay, I'm just going to repeat that line again. Two takeaways here before I conclude. If we can just repeat to ourselves periodically, I'm just going to try to make it a watchword for myself as I turn inward and try to destroy in myself that which I most abhor in others. We shan't get anywhere with hatred, Klaus. Maybe we could just make that a little watchword. We shan't get anywhere with hatred, Klaus. Okay, it's not going to work. But oh my gosh, each of us must turn inward and destroy in himself all that he thinks he ought to destroy in others. And remember that every atom of hate we add to this world makes it still more inhospitable. All right, and that's not who we are, and that's not what we're doing. That's not what we're about. We're not here to contribute to the hate. Hating and hating one another is where we used to be. Okay, and Eddie Heal is okay. She's a she's a young Jewish woman. She reads the New Testament. In fact, she's going to be okay. Let me just go ahead here. I mean, what I'm saying is she's not rank and file Christian, right? She's rank and file Jewish woman, Holocaust victim, all right, experiencing the oppression and extermination of so much of her people. She's seeing it happen, all right. Every atom of hate we add to this world makes it still more inhospitable. We're not helping anything. And you, Klaus, dogged old class fighter you have always been, dismayed and astonished at the same time, say, but that is Christianity. And I, amused by your confusion, retort quite coolly, yes, Christianity. And why ever not? Boy, just another Selah moment. She's not a professing Christian, but she's reading Jesus, and she's reading the Sermon on the Mount. And so, yes, Christianity, and why ever not? As Gandhi said, your Christ attracts me. It's kind of the rest of the church. It's the followers that are the issue. So, yes, exactly. Every atom of hate we add to this world makes it still more inhospitable. Turn inward upon ourselves and destroy in ourselves that which we would destroy in others. Take the mote out of your eye, or the beam out of your eye, so that you can then see clearly to help your brother take the speck out of his. I mean, just beautifully put. And then having said that, yes, Christianity, and why ever not? I then see her looking outside at night, as she just muses, and this is the end of this day's entry. At night, the barracks sometimes lay in the moonlight. At night, the barracks sometimes lay in the moonlight, made out of silver and eternity, like a plaything that had slipped from God's preoccupied hand. Wow, what a lens through which to see barracks and confinement. Made out of silver and eternity in the moonlight, like a plaything that had slipped from God's preoccupied hand. I'm reading these journal entries slowly. This is something to slowly roll about the tongue and not to rush through. So I'm just trying to take one of these every couple of days, and I just really want to stretch this out. Yeah, 2-year read. That's where I am. But anyway, that would be my word to myself, and thus to you. That's the note on which I would commend us to begin this year. We shan't get anywhere with hatred, Klaus. Each of us must turn inward and destroy in himself all that he thinks he ought to destroy in others, and remember that every atom of hate we add to this world makes it still more inhospitable, especially hate that's done in the name of religion, especially the religion of Christ, because this is Christianity, which is all too often much more clearly grasped by a woman gazing on barracks in moonlight and seeing something of silver and eternity, like a plaything dropped from the preoccupied hands of God. She can see more clearly, perhaps, than us who occupy, at times, masked at least, in our sanctuaries. See the love of Christ that is meant. That's what we are exhaling into the world, unmasked, exhaling into the world the love of Jesus. And that makes the world a hospitable place, even a barracks. So there you go. So next week, we'll get on to the devil, okay? And in the meantime, go exhale some love and chesed and mercy and grace.